Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'm going to be going over the clash of the deputies at this week's PMQs as Boris Johnson was out the country. No, he hadn't fled. He was trying to scrounge a trade deal out of President Biden again. So it was left to the deputy leaders to battle it out this week. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news in politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. And second, for those who watch Maximilian Robespierre as well, as I know many of you do, I'm going to be on his stream this week. It's on Friday, so tomorrow. Actually, depends when you watch this. Might be today, might have been yesterday. But I'll put details in the community tab. If you check on the channel, if you click on the channel name, click on community tab. Hopefully there's something in there. If there isn't, shout at me loudly. But anyway, PMQs. Bit of a first, because both Dominic Raab as Deputy Prime Minister and Angela Rayner as Deputy Leader of Labour, they've both taken Prime Minister's questions a couple of times, but never against each other. Dominic Raab originally deputised when Boris Johnson was ill with COVID in hospital, as Keir Starmer had just become Labour leader. Rayner had also deputised for Starmer when he'd had to isolate, again for COVID reasons. But this was the first time when the deputies stood at the dispatch box during PMQs against each other. And it was under the usual circumstances, because this is normally why you deputise. Those circumstances that normally call for this are that the Prime Minister is away on official business, sometimes out of the country, as he is at the moment. And so it is usual for the main parties to have their own deputies face off against whomever is deputising for the Prime Minister. And Dominic Raab has his shiny new official title of Deputy Prime Minister. He always was the deputy, we knew that, but it was unofficial. Now it's official. He was given the title by way of compensation for being demoted from Foreign Secretary recently. And just like when he deputised last spring, Dominic Raab gave us all a masterclass in demonstrating why it would be the dream of those of us who are anti-Tory if he succeeded Boris Johnson as leader of the Conservative Party. Because it wasn't just that he didn't answer the questions put to him. That's a given. And that would be no different to Boris Johnson. And he doesn't suffer public outrage as a result of his behaviour, so Raab wouldn't as well. It's that he couldn't even be bothered to distract or waffle on about something else, giving the impression to those not paying attention that he wasn't actually answering the question. He didn't just not answer the question, he just said nothing at all. It's like he was asked a question, he would stand up. It was almost as if he was just going, and then sat back down. Just as over the past couple of weeks, the questions from both Labour and the SNP, where Deputy Leader in Westminster, Kirsten Oswald, took over this time, it was about the serious damage that the government is doing to the cash flow of ordinary working people. They're raising our bills, raising our taxes, and not doing nothing for our income. In fact, they're cutting low paid workers' income. And over the past week, a number of the Labour front bench have been pointing out, because of the gas crisis, that having energy prices increase at just the time that the government are nicking over £1,000 a year off the lowest paid workers is obscene. Rayner made the point that the amount of money that the government was taking from these workers is almost exactly equal to about the annual price of energy. In other words, the government are literally taking away the equivalent of the money needed to pay energy bills from full-time but low-paid workers in this country. And as I've said many times before, I like comparisons like that. The Conservatives talk all the time about numbers, figures, amounts of money. Oh, so many millions, so many billions, but never any context. What's that worth then? And of course there's no context, because in context, the figures are horrendous. They're nothing to crow about. Attach context to government figures for everything, without fail. I also approved of Rayner's sarky attitude with Raab. Marked contrast with Boris Johnson. When she deputised for Starmer against Johnson, she took a very different approach. But Angela Rayner has a couple of good strings to her bow, I think, for these sorts of exchanges. The first is her clear working class background. Hasn't really worked for previous leaders, at least not for a few decades. I mean, Blair, Brown and Corbyn were all private school, leaders. Miliband and Starmer weren't. Both came from ordinary backgrounds, but it's not clear from just listening to them. For all anyone knows, they may have gone to a private school. So when when Labour try and point out the elitist attitudes of Tory ministers, they just flip it around and go, you're all part of the Westminster elite, is the term they use. And it's easy for people to just think this is one group of privileged ragging on another. Can't do that with Angela Rayner, not a chance. Any Tory minister who even tried to accuse Rayner of being a metropolitan elite would just be laughed out of the chamber by their own side. And another strong quality of Rayner, because that's an accidental one, is a sharp, sarky attitude. I like that. My own attitude when debating, because we can call it that, with people who talk unmitigated rubbish is to ridicule. Always ridicule it. Don't take it seriously. Don't allow other people listening to think that what that person is saying is serious. And I think it's a very powerful tool, and I've annoyed no end of people in my time by employing it. Not always to my benefit. It has sometimes gone badly wrong. You're not really supposed to do it to managers in your workplace. And Rayner opened up by commiserating with Raab on the fact that Johnson had gone all the way to the United States but made zero progress on the trade deal he promised us. She asked Raab if he still believes that British workers are the worst idlers in the world, which is a reference, for those who don't know, to a book that was co-written by Dominic Raab, Priti Patel and a few others, whose levels of literacy would make it surprising that they could write a whole page, much less a book, and penned some years ago when they were first starting out as politicians, young Tories. And naturally, there was no answer to that. I didn't bother to answer that one. And it didn't end there. She asked how many days a worker on £18,000 a year would have to work to pay for one night in the hotel where he was lounging around instead of actually doing his job. And it was like she was taking him on a crash course in schooling. First, literature. Oh, he didn't answer that question. Well, let's try some maths then. He didn't know the answer to that one either, so Rayner had to tell him 50 days. And linking to the energy crisis, Rayner also followed up by expressing surprise that there should be a shortage of hot air on the government benches. And all Raab could do was limply respond by using the same joke against her. It's a classic case of, no, you are, but doesn't really work once you're over the age of 8 years old. But as sometimes with Starmer, I do wish he hadn't let Raab get away with some easy get-outs. Sometimes I imagine when they say something in response and Starmer, or in this case Rayner, lets it go, sometimes I think they're just not letting themselves be distracted. They've got their line of question, they're just going to stick to it. But I think there are some things you shouldn't let go. Like Rayner accused Raab of complaining about having to share a taxpayer-funded 115-room mansion with his successor, Liz Truss. And Raab countered by saying, wasn't taxpayer funded, it's paid for by a charity. Okay, she may have got the details wrong there. And in most circumstances, something like that happens, you go, I seem to have got that wrong. You probably apologise, you certainly move on. But this is politics. Don't let it go just because you're wrong. There are two things that Rayner could have countered with. One, the point is that he is whining about having to share a 115-room mansion with another person. If that doesn't scream entitled elitist, I do not know what does. That is the core point here. But secondly, if it's a charity, it gets tax relief, doesn't it? So it's not entirely correct to say that no taxpayer money is used for it, is it? And she also let it slide when Raab suggested that under Labour taxes go up and the economy goes down. That's not true at all. And it's one of those lies that really works on people, which is why I don't like letting it slide. Never miss an opportunity to correct it, especially now that the economy is on its arse. I mean, it's been on its arse throughout the Conservatives' time in power, but right now, through the floor, and taxes are going up. Why, she should have said, if the Tories don't like taxes, has this Conservative government now given this country the largest tax burden? A larger tax burden, in fact, than any Labour government in history. Why is that? Ask him that. No way of answering it without lying. So it was an enjoyable little PMQs from Rayner. I quite liked it. Raab was no match, really. That was the only disappointing thing. It was ducks in a barrel, really. Like I say, if Johnson were to be deposed and somehow the Tories were mad enough to let Raab take over, which on performances like this, surely they wouldn't, I'd be a lot more relaxed about our chances come the next election, whenever that is. He may actually be more useless as a leader than Ian Duncan Smith was. I wouldn't at all mind finding out if he is or not. But then it was the SNP, their deputy in Westminster at any rate, Kirsten Oswald, who also used the same line of attack regarding the assault on the incomes of ordinary workers. I mean, right now at the moment, it's absolutely the buttons to be pressing on the Conservatives. There are lots of other important issues, but this is the one that's going to resonate with many voters. And she made similar points to Rayner and called for a couple of things. Practical value. She first of all called for the cuts to universal credit to be cancelled, as Ed Miliband did for Labour earlier this week as well. Raab said that we have rising employment and rising wages. Right? I mean, we're about 2 weeks away from a severe jump in unemployment when furlough ends. And wages are only rising for the few in critical shortage areas of our economy. And only then if those workers are demanding better pay and being prepared to move on if they don't get it. And that's not evenly distributed around the country either. You know, where you have higher unemployment, well, you don't have quite the same critical shortage of lower paid workers there. So they're not benefiting from these wage increases because there isn't the same shortage of workers there. It's no good pointing out that the people of Essex might be getting a few quid more because I suspect Oswald is more interested in workers in Scotland. And the government should be very concerned, you would have thought, about the people in the north of England at least, where those wages and employment are not going up as he suggests. But they're still getting the hike in national insurance. They're still being taxed more. You know, energy bills are still going up. Food prices are still going up, and all to pay for his largesse. And Oswald then said, right, okay, you don't like that idea. I've got another practical idea you could implement. She cited citizen advice warning of a tsunami hitting families. Would the government initiate an emergency energy payment? To which Raab responded that they were capping costs. That'll save people £100. But the thing is, so if bills would otherwise go up £500 and you cap them to only going up by £400, that's not saving, is it? You're not saving them £100. You're costing them £400. It's just a lower burden than would otherwise have been the case. And I've said this before about the Tories. It's like they think that lowering people more gently into poverty should be applauded because in their minds, they're doing you a favour by not just throwing you in with concrete shoes. Well, we're lowering you gently into poverty. What's the problem? We should be getting medals for this. Unfortunately, the SNP only get 2 questions, so there was no comeback from that. The one saving grace, I will say, for Dominic Raab, the thing I will say in his favour, is he doesn't bother to grandstand on his final questions like Johnson, so we were spared that at least. I saw someone say that he was probably subdued because he's still upset by his demotion, trying to put a brave face on it. Yeah, but I'm the Deputy Prime Minister. Yeah, you were before, but you were also the Foreign Secretary, like one of the top 3 in government. What are you now? Justice Secretary? Yeah, okay. Don't think so. I don't think his performance yesterday was any more abject than last summer. I think his piss-poor attempts to deflect criticism are just because he can't be bothered. I think he's actually lazier than Boris Johnson, and that is a mightily low bar to limbo under. But those are my thoughts anyway. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.